Hello everyone, welcome to Mains Question Analysis. In this session, we'll be discussing about the question which appeared in the 2019 mains examination and it deals with polity and governance. The question reads, the reservation of seats for women in the institution of local self-government has had a limited impact on patriarchal character of the Indian political process. Comment, and we are expected to answer in 250 words and this question is of 15 marks. Now, in our analysis, we'll be focusing on few important things of this question. First and foremost, we'll be asking about why the question was asked. Second was, what was the demand of the question? Third was, cover the topics in the current affairs. Fourth was, objective of giving the reservation of women in local government. Next is, how patriarchy has influenced the empowerment of women. And last is, answer approach or suggested answer. Now, before we move further, let's first understand why this question has been asked. The 73rd and 74th Amendment Act became operational in the year 1992, and now we have seen that more than 25 years have gone by. UPSC is in habit of asking questions where some policy is being implemented, and after a point of time, they need to understand what is the impact of the policy. One of the objectives of setting up local self government is to also ensure gender equality. And with this objective, reservation was also given to the women under Article 243D. Now, through this question, UPSC is asking us to identify what is the problem in terms of local self government and why the entire Indian political system or process does not have the same kind of representation for women as we have seen in many Western countries. So, this is what the objective of the question is. Let's move to the demand of the question. The moment we talk about the demand of the question, we need to understand two, three important keywords. First and foremost, the question asks us to focus on local self government. And then the question asks us to find out the problem in the Indian political process. So it needs to be seen that around 46% of seats in Panchayati Raj institutions are occupied by women. But at the same time, when we talk about state legislature and union parliament, this percentage hovers at around 8 to 10% only. This is where the examiner wants to know why there is a discrepancy between this 46% and 8 to 10% that we need to highlight through this question. Now, the third important aspect is coverage of topic in the current affairs sources. Now, the women empowerment and gender equality has been an important topic for discussion, and this is also a part of Millennium Development Goals as well as Sustainable Development Goals, and hence this topic has been covered many times over in our discussions. Next, when we focus on the objectives of giving reservation to women in local government, again the objective is very simple. The government wanted to ensure gender equality. At the same time, the government wanted to ensure participation of women in the institutions of local self government, state legislature, and the parliament, and hence this step was required. However, there are many reasons which influence the outcome of this noble objective, and this is where the patriarchy comes into picture, as patriarchal nature of Indian society is one of the primary reasons for stopping gender equality in case of political participation. So again, this is a very important aspect. The last thing that we're going to talk about is approach of answer writing, and we'll be discussing some of the important parts of the suggested answer that we can take it up. So let's begin our analysis. Now, before moving further, let's focus more about the question. As already mentioned, the question will be part of the GS paper 2 and will come under governance, constitution, polity, social justice, and international relations. Now, let's try to understand the context of the question. The context of the question highlights a very important aspect. First, Article 15.3 of the Constitution of India empowers the state to make special provisions for women. Second important aspect is the participation of women in political process. And when we talk about political process, in this case we are talking about state legislatures and parliament, hovers at around 8 to 10%. Patriarchal nature of Indian society is the reason for the lack of participation of women in the political process as such. Now, the various initiatives were taken by the government to empower women and help them in performing their duties. Now, the point that we need to understand that there is a paradoxical situation. The paradoxical situation emerges from the fact that there are 2.5 lakh elected women representatives which are also called as EWR. And this consists of around 46% of the total strength. At the same time, when we talk about the state legislature and the parliament, the percentage drops to around 8 to 10%. Now, the point that this question wants to highlight is that why there is so much of a gap. So, local self government institutions are considered to be training grounds, and once the people are adequately trained, they can move up the ladder and perform duties at state legislature or at the level of parliament. However, in the Indian scenario, this is not happening. And why this is not happening? The important reason which the author wants to discuss is the patriarchal nature of Indian society. So, while trying to answer this question, we need to highlight the paradox, we need to understand the problem, and suggest way forward to give a complete perspective of this answer. So, let's try to understand the references that we might have used for this particular purpose. Now we have presented the screenshot of two products that are published by Rao's IS Study Circle. On the left hand side, this is part of Main's Compass, and it basically talks about women empowerment issues in Panchayat. This goes on to talk about patriarchy as well, and in which institutionalization of husband, intervention of elected women in her functioning, and the topic of Sarpanchpati is also being highlighted. Next is lack of political awareness among women and rural areas, and in this fashion, this problem is discussed in great detail. On the right hand side, we have taken an article from the Focus magazine. In this article, the author highlights the kind of problem women face when they go for political participation. And this was published in the month of April 2018. So you can see that there was sufficient resource available to answer this question from the Rao's IS study material only. Now let us try to understand the question itself and what is required to answer this question. The question says the reservation of seats for women in the institution of local self government has had a limited impact on the patriarchal nature of the Indian political process. And then we are expected to comment. Now, first and foremost, let's understand the question tag. When we say comment, what does it mean and how we should customize our ideas so that our answer is in line with the requirement of the question. When we focus on the comment, in this type of a question, the examinee is seeking the opinion, and a test taker should substantiate his or her answer with sufficient examples, cases to present his or her views. At the same time, it is important to give a balanced perspective without discounting the question. Now, try to understand when we say without discounting the question, it means one of the things. In your approach, you might not agree with this thing. But at the same time, the question is very clear that reservation has had limited impact. So, in this case, we are not going to talk about demerits of reservation or there is no need of reservation. And we also will not be focusing that there is no problem. In this manner, you will write your answer where you will put these two things in the background and then present your ideas. Next important aspect is to understand the objective of the examiner. It is clearly highlighted in the limited impact on patriarchal character of Indian political system. It means that the reservation had limited impact and author feels that reservation is the primary cause. Last but not the least, an important aspect is to extrapolate information, and this is highlighted in the paradox as well. The last part of the question adds a twist. The question asks us to focus on local self government and later expects you to reflect on the entire political process. And this is where you need to understand that when you talk about local self government, you need to consider rural plus urban. At the same time, whatever result you draw, that result should actually reflect on the entire political process or the system. So, this is where this question is a little different, and we need to pay attention to all the aspects in order to answer this question in the right fashion. Now, let us focus on the suggested nature of the model answer. Now, when we say about the suggested answer, we have divided this answer into three parts, which is like introduction, second is the body, and when we move further, we'll be talking about the way forward as well. So, in this context, we'll be dividing our discussion in three separate parts. At the same time, we have put across the word limit for each of them. Now, the first and foremost, let's highlight the nature of the problem. participation of women in the Indian political system is very low. At the same time, it is advisable that you start with some kind of a paradoxical statement. And when we say paradoxical statement, it simply means highlighting that participation of women in local self government is around 46%. At the same time, in state and union legislatures, this is as low as 8 to 10% on. And in this fashion, you can introduce the dismal state of gender parity. And you should also try to relate it to the important aspect of patriarchy. So, in this fashion, you can actually structure your introduction, and this will be of around 50 to 60 words only. Once you have done this thing in the right fashion, it means you have understood the question, and the next part of the question will be a natural flow in terms of what the body should be. And when we talk about the body of the answer, we'll be focusing on some of the problems which are caused by the patriarchy. Now, let's try to understand how patriarchy has negatively impacted the process of political empowerment for women in India. And this can be shown through clear cut points about how patriarchy has done this. So there are few simple points that you can highlight. First is the first is the patriarchal mindset of the people, which does not allow women to express and operate freely in local self-government bodies. Second is institutionalization of intervention, that is Sarpanchpati, which was also highlighted by the Prime Minister of India, which talks about the husbands of elected women in rural areas participate in the political process, and women does not get an opportunity for that. Another important and significant feature is political intervention of MPs and MLAs in the area in the functioning of the panchayats. Next important aspect is illiteracy or low level of education amongst the women. Now we need to relate all these features to patriarchy, and we know that illiteracy or low level of education is also a reflection of patriarchal nature of Indian society. Next is lack of political awareness amongst the women. Last but not the least, societal dogmas which challenge the capability of women in leading these institutions. And when we talk about societal dogmas, these are reflected not only at the local self government level, but also in the bureaucratic machinery. And hence, you need to highlight these features as well. You can also add few things which will add value. For example, in some states, two-child policy is followed. Now we know that the patriarchal nature of Indian society does not allow women the right to choose number of children. And this also goes against the participation of women in the political process. So these are the important things that we need to highlight when we talk about the body and how patriarchy has negatively influenced the political empowerment of women in the entire Indian political process. At the same time, you can say that women participation is around 46% in the local self-government, but at the same time, their impact can't be higher than 8 to 10%, as it is seen at the union and state level. So this is where you will relate the entire thing with the entire political process. We have done this thing to extrapolate information. Now, when we talk about institution in local self-government, around 19 states have gone for around 50% of reservation for women in the seats for local self-government institution. At the same time, there is no reservation for women in the legislative assembly or parliament level, and hence the impact is so low to 8 to 10% only. It means the political process of empowerment has not taken off, and this is where the problem is, and the problem lies in the patriarchal nature of Indian society. You can explain all these things in around 120 to 150 words. If you do this right, it means you have hammered the nail in the head. Now, when we talk about any kind of question, when we focus on comment, then we need to give way forward as well. Now, we need to highlight the various kind of steps that government has taken in this regard. At the same time, we need to actually focus on some of the successful programs. Now, we know that Swachh Bharat Abhiyan has been a great success, and this program actually worked on four basic parameters. First was inform, educate, communicate, and reinforce. Now, the idea of reinforcing is very important for the success of anything, and hence we need to focus for the similar kind of reinforcement in the case of women participation or empowerment as well. So, we take lead from the successful programs and try to implement the same in this context as well. So we need to focus on this aspect. More things that we can highlight, we can also talk about allocate budget to train and empower women in every panchayat and urban body. Next can be reservation of seats at state legislature and parliament level for the adequate representation of women. And you can also highlight successful model like Kudamshri of Kerala and implement its learning across the country. So in this fashion, you can highlight the important things of way forward in around 50 to 70 words, and this answer would be complete in its nature. So through this discussion, we hope that you are clear in terms of understanding the question, interpret the question, present ideas in a structured fashion. And if we do this right, the answer is complete and you will get good marks in the examination.